Hello and welcome back to the sixth episode of the Northern Lights Sportscast. I'm back here. I'm Nate, and here today I have with me Cody, and we are going to chat with you today about the results of all the conference tournaments we talked about in our previous videos. And we are first going to start by jumping into the Atlantic Sun Conference. The Atlantic Sun Championship took place at the end of the first weekend of all the conference tournaments, and it resulted in a last-minute win by Kennesaw State. 67 to 66 was the final score. Cody, you want to give us a recap of kind of how that tournament ended up?
There was no really big upsets in this tournament. The only big one was a fifth over a fourth seed. And then from there on out, it was kind of the top seeds getting to the championship and having a really close match in the championship. Only 1 point difference, and Kennesaw sneaks by to make it into the big dance.
Yes, they do. Yeah, these two teams definitely had some big contributors here. For Kennesaw State, Terrell Burden, a guard for Kennesaw, he had 19 points, 3 assists, and 2 steals. Very crucial in their victory. And then in Liberty's defeat, Kyle Rode, their forward, had 23 points. He was 9 for 14 from the field and 4 for 7 from 3 point, but it just wasn't enough to get over the hump for Liberty. Um, Cody, any other things about the ASUN we should know about from the tournament going into March Madness?
I think Kennesaw was the only team from the ASUN to make it into the tournament, which is kind of usual for these lower conferences.
All right, then we are going to move steadily on to the Sun Belt Conference. They also had their championship that same weekend. Much bigger tournament the Sun Belt is. Their final game was between Louisiana and South Alabama, with the Raging Cajuns coming out on top. They won 71 to 66. Uh, you know, Cody, how did this tournament unfold?
This one's not as like written as most people usually have with the higher seeds moving on most of the time. This one had some big upsets with South Alabama being the number one seed in their very first game and then making it all the way to the championship by beating James Madison and then having to take on two-seeded Louisiana in the final round. South Alabama, I was a little bit cheering on them to see if they can make it all the way, but sadly they couldn't get it out at the end. And another team that also had a very great tournament playthrough is Texas State, the 11th seed. They beat Georgia State, Old Dominion, and Marshall to get all the way to the semifinals, but then finally lost it to lose the future champion Louisiana.
Yeah, that was quite the big upsets they were able to throw in that tournament. Gosh, the both teams had quite the performers in the championship game. Thomas Falks for Louisiana, he poured in 23 points. He was 9 for 13 from the field and 3 for 6 from 3 point, and the Raging Cajuns win. And then South Alabama's Isaiah Moore poured in 33 points, a game high, and then he was 10 for 12 from the field and 12 for 15 from the free throw line. Um, Cody, any last things about the Sun Belt? All right, and we'll move on to the Horizon League. The Horizon League Championship also took place around that same weekend, and it resulted with Northern Kentucky gaining the automatic berth to the NCAA tournament with a win over Cleveland State, 63 to 61. I know there were a lot of upsets in this tournament, Cody. You want to just highlight a couple here?
Well, the only big ones that happened were in the semifinals. The number one seed and number two seed fell badly to the fourth and third seed, with Northern Kentucky beating number one seed Youngstown State 75 to 63, and then Cleveland State, the number three seed, beating second seed Milwaukee 93 to 80. So both of those, the both top higher seeds fall don't make it even close for these final two. But then the championship game, that was a really great game between these two teams, Northern Kentucky and Cleveland State, coming down to a 2 point finish,
Yeah,
with Northern Kentucky beating 63 to 61.
yeah, and I gotta say, from the stats here, it appears that these teams were very ready to kind of share the rock a little bit. I mean, the game high was 18 points from Marquess Warwick from Northern Kentucky. He had 18 points. He was 11 for 13 from the free throw line and 6 rebounds. Cleveland State's top performer was Deshaun Parker, who had 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists in the close loss for Cleveland State. Gosh, what a tournament the Horizon League always puts on. I always mark it on my list to go take a look at how their tournament's going. So, but we are going to move on now to the Patriot League. The Patriot League championship was also around the same time, and it resulted in the old reliable and old faithful Colgate winning the championship game by a larger score than we've seen so far, 79-61, and they had quite the game. Cody, you want to give us a little information on that?
Well, I was gonna say Colgate in every single game they played in this conference, they either won by close to 20 points or less. Colgate's first game, they 92-73 victory. Colgate's second game, 91-74 victory, and then in the final, the only game they didn't get to 90 points was that one with a 79-61.
Yeah. Yep. So, and yep, Colgate goes back to the NCAA tournament another year in a row. Not really anybody that had such a just stat breaking game for either team. Tucker Richardson topped the stat sheet for Colgate with 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 11 assists, which is a rare triple double you'll see in college basketball. And then Josh Rivera for Lafayette had 13 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. And now we will move over to the Ohio Valley Conference. This conference championship also was around that first weekend. Southeast Missouri State came out victorious with an 89-82 win over Tennessee Tech, which I know Tennessee Tech was kind of a surprise in the final game. Cody, how did that tournament go? Was I wrong in Tennessee Tech? Were they the second seed?
Yes, they're the second seed.
Figures.
I was going to say Southeast Missouri State is the surprise in the final. They were the fifth seed out of everything. They beat number 1 seed Morehead State in the semifinals pretty convincingly, 65-58, and then had a close game here with Tennessee Tech till the final seconds, where I believe Tennessee Tech tried to do the foul game and it didn't work out.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely some interesting performers here for both teams. Chris Harris of SEMO. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and SEMO was one of the, they played every single round. That's a first. I've never really seen that before.
Yeah, remind me what seed they were again?
They were the fifth seed. They had to play the eighth seed Lindenwood, then they would face the fourth seed, and then first seed. And then second seed. Yeah, they were in the first round. They're a rare
Cinderella story.
So I'd say they were in the first round. Then they got into quarters. So it was one of those weird brackets that we thought of because it was like somebody was in a bye every round.
Yeah.
And Southeast from the very back actually made it all the way and won. So that's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, that really is cool to see. Both teams had quite the performers in the game. Chris Harris for SEMO had 26 points. He was 7 for 19 from the field and 11 for 13 from the free throw line. And then in Tennessee Tech's loss, Deontay Wood led them with 24 points, 8 for 15 from the field, and 7 rebounds. And now we will move over to the Big South Conference. The Big South had quite the tournament, I think, if I remember correctly. It resulted in UNC Asheville winning over Campbell 77-73 in the championship game. Cody, you want to give us the rundown on how that tournament played out?
No, the biggest thing is Campbell making it all the way to the championship. They were also one of the teams that were in the very first round and played their hearts out to make it all the way, but couldn't pull it out in the end against the number 1 seed UNC Asheville.
Yeah,
Campbells were strolling, but they couldn't find the water.
Yeah,
as they say.
I remember when we were previewing this one, we were all kind of we all thought UNC Asheville should have a huge chance to win it, but we were
Hmm.
thinking that it was very possible someone was going to upset them. And Campbell came close. They came within 4, but
I was gonna say this one and Colgate was the with our pick'ems. We kind of actually this one and Colgate were the first ones that I believe we all got correct.
yeah. Yeah, just
Well, the
because we all
winner. I
thought the
wouldn't
top
say
seed
winner
was
of.
going to win or was going to win it
Yeah.
all. It was very straightforward conference, we thought, and that's how it ended up playing out. Now, this one was a little bit closer than I think we probably would have predicted.
Yeah.
But just to briefly highlight both teams' top scorers, Drew Pember for UNC Asheville led them with 29 points. He was 9 for 19 from the field with 8 rebounds. And then for the Camels, Jay Powell, forward for them, scored 26 points and was 11 for 18 from the field with 10 rebounds. And now we're going to move over to the Northeast Conference. This was an interesting final game as MEAC won the final game 67 to 66 over Fairleigh Dickinson, but MEAC is still ineligible for the NCAA tournament. So Fairleigh Dickinson will be representing the Northeast Conference in March Madness this year. I want to make sure we clarify that before we start. I know I watched parts of this game and it was fairly back and forth. And there was a decent part in the final, probably 5 minutes of the game, where I was fairly sure Fairleigh Dickinson was probably going to be able to actually pull out the win and not even have to make the committee take the runner-up for the conference. But Merrimack pulled out the win, and
Yep.
what I believe is their first season in transition, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
They also would have almost made it to the football playoffs if they didn't have this disqualification
interesting. I
for
honestly didn't even
FCS.
remember that. So Merrimack's having a really good year in Division One. Let's just say that one right now. They'll definitely be a school to watch in the next coming years, especially over in the Northeast Conference.
I
Uh,
also would say there wasn't any really upsets. Top four teams, they didn't. The top four teams won, and they didn't even need to reseed anybody
hmm. That's right. That
after
was
the
one of the
first round.
conferences that reseeds after one of the
They
rounds.
didn't
So
need to. All top four won, so they just kept everybody the same.
yeah, in that perspective, it was boring. It all went out to chalk.
Yep.
Um, But just to briefly highlight the stats here, Ziggy Reed for Merrimack, he had 23 points. He was 9 for 15 from the field, and he brought down 6 rebounds. And for FDU, Dimitri Roberts brought down or put up 15 points. He was 6 for 10 from the field, and he managed 6 assists. All right, and as Cody takes his glasses off, that means we're going to head to the Missouri Valley Conference. Always an interesting tournament over there in St. Louis at Arch Madness. The Drake Bulldogs pulled off the convincing win over Bradley. So as much as I just said, of course, that it was an interesting tournament, not exactly the closest championship game.
No.
Cody, I do know, I remember seeing, though, that the semifinals were fairly close in both of those games, weren't they?
No.
They weren't?
The Bradley Indiana State game, yes. Duke,
Okay.
not Duke. Sorry,
Drake.
Drake versus Southern Illinois. That was not no. The
Okay.
Bradley barely beat Indiana State. They won by 1 point. Excuse me.
Yeah, I remember a lot of us wanted to pick Bradley or Indiana State to win that tournament.
I think I picked Indiana State because I thought they would beat Bradley, and then I thought it was going to be Indiana versus Southern Illinois. But Drake actually won, and then pretty convincingly beat Bradley the very next day.
Yeah. Yep. I know, or I see here, for Drake, Tucker DeVries highlighted their stat sheet. He put up 22 points on 8 for 14 from the field, and he brought down 6 rebounds. Bradley, on the other hand, they kind of spread the ball. They only scored 51 points, so not really that many high scores. They did have Jashawn Henry in double digits at 10 points. He was 4 for 8 from the field with 2 rebounds and a steal. All right, and off we're going to go to what some people don't consider a major conference anymore, the West Coast Conference, which plays host to the championship game between Gonzaga and St. Mary's, which we all totally could have predicted because that tournament is set up for the top 2 seeds.
Mm-hmm. Horrible. I don't even watch this tournament anymore.
Yeah, I mean the only game that's really worth watching, and unfortunately, is the championship because you just
But
know
that
none of
was
the lower
just a
teams.
blowout,
Yeah, it
too,
was,
because
which
that
was
was
a
the
so
same day.
it was such a surprise to me. I really thought that St. Mary's was potentially going to
Because
win it.
that was the same time we were watching the Summit League championship, and we were going like, this game is kind of a blowout. Maybe we should go watch the WCC. And then we looked at the score, going like, nope, it's the same thing there.
Not
What
an
the hell?
interesting game, so there's no point.
Yeah.
Ah, gosh. And even the stat lines for these, some of the guys put up some decent stat lines. Like Drew Timmy of Gonzaga put up 18 points on 8 for 10 from the field and brought down 6 rebounds. Versus for St. Mary's, Logan Johnson put up 20 points. He was 7 for 16 from the field, 5 for 6 from the free throw line, and brought down 4 rebounds. But don't fret for both of these teams. They are both in the NCAA tournament, so
They dancing.
they're both going dancing. Just
Ooh.
Gonzaga will go dancing as the automatic bid. Not that it
They
mattered.
can face each other again, though.
They
They're
could,
in the
couldn't
same
they?
bracket.
Are they in the
So
same
hopefully
region or the
St.
same
Mary's
side?
figures it out if they play each other again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, St. Mary. So it's interesting because Gonzaga now, that's the second game they've beaten St. Mary's in this year, and they lost the first game. Which I don't know then, because I think the game that Gonzaga won at the end of the regular season over St. Mary's was fairly close. I just don't remember where it was. So that, yeah, as you mentioned, that'll be something to watch heading into the tournament,
Yeah.
which we will cover later. But now we're going to move on to the Southern Conference, the SoCon, um, and some familiar teams to Cody and I because of some football stuff that you guys will learn about
Yeah.
in the fall. Both Furman and Chattanooga made the SoCon championship. They're two typically very good FCS programs.
Yeah,
Um,
Chattanooga sadly did not make it in the football playoffs this year, but
yeah,
Ferrum did, and Sanford was the other one out of this.
yeah, but we
But
we'll
that's
leave we'll
football.
leave the
That's
after
football.
FCS talk for another
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Furman managed to pull out a 9-point victory over Chattanooga, 88-79.
It was
Cody,
a
how
little
did the tournament
shocker.
go?
It was a little shocker that Chattanooga got to the championship, though.
Yeah,
Sure, they won it last year, but they haven't
weren't
had
they
a
the
very
eighth seed?
seventh.
They were
They
the
were the
seventh
seventh
seed.
seed. So they had to play in that first round play-in tournament. I said it, Nate. Are you happy?
Yeah, yeah, I am
It's,
happy.
it should be buys. It should not be playing. But
I'm okay with
that's
calling it the first round, and I guess if you really want to call it a first round bye, fine. But I like calling it the first round because that's really what it is. It's not a
it
play-in tournament
is
because I don't like the play-in tournament. But
playing tournaments. I don't like playing tournaments.
yeah, so
Uh,
that's why I don't refer them to play-in tournaments.
but then why'd you correct me the one time
Yeah,
saying
I
it's
don't
playing
know. I was
tournament?
thinking about something else.
Okay, we're off topic. Going on. Chattanooga was the seventh seed and actually defeated the second seed Sanford Bulldogs by I don't know if it was a late 3-pointer, but they won by 3. And then the third seed also fell to the sixth seed Wolford, with Chattanooga defeating Wolford by 12 points, getting into that championship game, hopefully to show off against Furman, but that did not happen,
No,
sadly.
I mean they only beat them by 9, so it wasn't that bad compared to others we've already seen. But
I will
um,
say in like high school and college sports, it's in basketball, it's 9 or 11. That's usually how they finish if they start a fallow game.
yeah, just because it pressures one of the teams to shoot better in the final minute and a half, and if they're on
Mhm.
the offensive, they need to score. Half the time they just can't get the shot up, especially kind of a mid-major team that might not have as much, I guess, talent as some of the high majors do. You might see that a lot. But then there's also some teams, like we'll see later on this list, that had quite the final 2 minutes. So as far as the stats go, Chattanooga had the game's highest score with Jake Stevens at 25 points in the loss, with 9 for 16 from the field and brought down 8 rebounds. Furman's top score was Jalen Slauson, who put up 20 points on 8 for 12 shooting and brought down 5 rebounds. All right, now we're going to move on to the conference that I know that all three of us, including Dash, who's not here today, watched. Uh,
Mhm.
and it was the Summit League tournament. I gotta say, before we start, Oral Roberts did win this game handily. They won it 92-58 over North Dakota State. Um,
Smacked.
yeah, I mean, I know going into that game, I was pretty sure that NDSU was either going to make it really close and somehow pull out the victory, or was going to be a huge blowout victory for ORU. So at the end of the day, it didn't surprise me that much. It's just it's hard to
It
beat.
hurts
It's really
sometimes.
hard to beat a team like ORU that has a 7'5" guy at that like Connor
Hmm.
Vanover. Um,
Look out, Duke.
yeah, I mean we will leave that for our next special, but
But I
that's
would
going to be an interesting
say
matchup.
the only upsets here would be North Dakota State over South Dakota State in that
Yeah.
semifinals matchup, which was a very great game for NDSU. I loved
Yes.
watching that as an NDSU fan. You can see
Me
my
too.
thing in the background. Um, and also the other one would be St. Thomas over Western Illinois, which I thought would have been a closer final score, but it probably was a closer game.
Oh, it
But
was. That
yeah,
was quite the game, but St. Thomas was able to pull away in the final minute and a half because of the foul game.
yeah. So
So, yeah, St. Thomas has got a bright future. I'll be curious to see what they do going forward. Uh,
uh,
Now, provided they keep their star freshman they had, supposedly he's going to be departing for Wisconsin, which is where he's from,
ooh,
so it makes sense. But
go Badgers apparently.
yeah, but just a quick stat cap for this game. For Oral Roberts, their typical star, Max Asmith, which I believe is one of the top scorers in the nation. Yet again, he put up 26 points on 7 for 15 from the field, and he also dished out 11 assists. For NDSU, they really had two top players. I just couldn't highlight. I could only highlight one. So Bowden Scumberg was their highlight player for the game, who put up 18 points on 6 for 11 shooting and 8 rebounds. I believe Grant Nelson, the NBA prospect, along with Max Asmus,
Mhm.
put up, I want to say 14 points, but I just don't have the stat sheet in front of me. All right, now we're going to move on to another conference out east, the Colonial Athletic Association, or the CAA. This was
Eh,
another interesting game. Um, Charleston beat UNC Wilmington 63-58 in a game that a lot of people were saying if Charleston lost this game, they were going to make it. They were going to make the tournament based on at large, just because they had such a good record. Cody, you want to give us the rundown here on how this tournament played out? Because I don't think
well,
UNCW was a top seed, were they?
UNCW? No, they were the fourth seed. They beat number
Yeah,
one seed Hofstra
that's right.
in that semifinals. Which, if you said, wouldn't that mean Hofstra should have got the automatic bid? Because Charleston was only at number two seed, not the
No,
automatic bid. Like,
the at
could have
large.
Hofstra? Yeah.
Charleston supposedly had quite the resume. I don't know. I was seeing a lot of buzz about them on championship day for the CAA.
Well,
It
I
was the
was
day
gonna
after the
say
Summit tournament, so
I kept hearing after the selection show, I kept hearing a lot of people saying Charleston to the Sweet 16, which I was like, why?
I don't know about that, but we
I
can
know
talk
they're the
about that
12th
tomorrow.
seed. But yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So, but
But Charleston, just the second seed, they uh, kind of just swept in all of their games until that they beat Stony Brook 70 pretty convincingly, 74-52. They
okay,
beat Townsend, the third seed. Hope I said that right. Townsend.
Townsend. Yep, you're right.
Townsend. Okay, and then I still have trouble saying it. I don't know why. 77-72. That was their semifinal victory, and then the final is 63-58.
Yep, yep,
They
and really not too crazy of stats from what I saw from the stat sheet originally. Ryan Larson led Charleston in the victory with 23 points, 9 for 16 shooting from the field, and he took 4 steals. Amari Kelly led UNCW in the championship efforts with 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 blocks. And now we're going to move on to a different conference, the America East Conference. Um, kind of
Hey,
a game. We all figured that
so
Vermont was going to win it. And
woo.
one thing I do want to highlight about how this game played out, because I watched the second half of this game, UMass Lowell was tied with Vermont with 4 minutes to go. So it's not like that Vermont just ran away with the whole thing. Now they ended up pulling away because UMass Lowell made a few key mistakes in the final minutes there, but it wasn't just a runaway game. I mean, UMass Lowell challenged them, but Vermont returns to the tournament for the second year in a row.
I'm sorry, but Vermont just has this conference. Like their victories are 84-57. That's a smacking, and then they got a 79-57 smacking. Vermont versus Louisville, this final score makes it look like they smacked them. So it
Yeah.
was a 72-59. So
I mean,
Vermont just owns this conference.
not every conference can afford to do neutral sites, but this is a conference that plays everything on the host's campus. So every game was at the higher seed, which is why this tournament's so spread out because they allowed travel time. But that final game was at Vermont, was at their arena.
So Vermont didn't have to do any traveling then.
No, they did not
they
have
were
to
the
travel
number
the
one
entire
seed.
tournament. They stayed home the whole time.
Yep.
So, but that's kind of a
Well, then
conversation
the
that
only
each conference
upset
has to have.
was the only upset. Then UMBC lost at home against Binghamton.
Binghamton. Yep.
Yeah, Binghamton.
Yeah. But
That's the only upset.
just to quickly recap the stats here, Dylan Penn led the championship winning effort for Vermont with 21 points, 8 for 12 shooting, and then 4 rebounds. Versus in the defeat, Alan Blunt led UMass Lowell with 14 points, 4 of 12 from the field, and 5 rebounds. Now I move over to the Big Sky Conference. Cody will be excited to talk about this one. I know we've been talking about this privately for the last couple of days. Montana State wins the Big Ten or the Big Sky Championship over Northern Arizona, who, yes, your eyes are not deceiving you, was not a top seed. They won 85-78 in a game that I thought that Montana State was going to win a lot more than that, considering that Northern Arizona only went 7-11 in league play. Cody, tell us about Northern Arizona's path to the title game.
Northern Arizona, well done. You guys just woke up for this bracket and decided to say, hey, we're going to the championship. Couldn't do it at the end to beat Montana State, but hey, you played very well. Northern Arizona was in the first round play-in tournament or however we decided it. I don't want to talk about it again. Just move on. Northern. Northern Arizona barely squeaks by the number 1 overall seed Eastern Washington 81-80 in the quarterfinals, and then kind of convincingly handles Montana in the semifinals to get all the way to the championship round. Northern Arizona I was kind of cheering them on to see if they could build up the big upset, but sadly, again, they could not.
And to just quickly recap the stats, Raekwon Battle led the Bobcats in the victory with 25 points, 8 for 14 from the field, and 3 for 4 from three-point. And Carson Towett led Northern Arizona with 16 points, 8 for 11 shooting from the field, and 9 rebounds. And now, in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the Southland Conference. Unfortunately, another repeat champion, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, beat Northwestern State 75-71. Cody, give us a quick recap here of how this went.
Not very much of a surprise here. Number 1 versus number 2 in that final championship, but the two big surprises probably was New Orleans and McNeese State being in the semifinals, the 8th and 7th seed.
That would be a surprise, yeah.
But yeah, but Texas A&M's Corpus Christi team that I kind of cheer on a little bit. Kind of just zooms into this tournament and gets to the big dance.
Yeah. All right, and then just a quick stat cap here. The leading scorer in the game was not on the winner's side. Northwestern State's DeMarcus Sharp led all scorers with 32 points. He was 15 of 31 from the field and dished out 7 assists. Corpus Christi's Owen Deese was their leading scorer with 16 points, 6 for 11 shooting, and 4 of 5 from the three-point line. On we go to the ACC, and this one also kind of a groan because feels like Duke always wins this tournament. Duke beat Virginia 75-71. Not a ton of stat getters, What?
My thing says 59-49, so I don't. But who
Oh,
cares? Keep going.
I might be wrong then. I'll have to go back and look. But not too many leading scores in this one. I believe Kyle Filipowski for Duke led all scores with 20 points, 8 of 17 from the field, and 10 rebounds. Reese Beekman led Virginia with 12 points, 5 or 11 from the field, dished out 4 assists, and took 4 steals. Cody, who beat the top seeds in the ACC? I don't remember.
Duke.
It was Duke?
Yes,
Okay.
which hurts me. It's Duke. They're the 4th seed. They beat number 1 seed Miami 85-78 in that semifinals, and I think I picked Virginia to win it all against Miami, and then that decides Duke just ruins my pick every single year in this tournament bracket, so I'm getting
Yeah.
a little annoyed with them.
Well, yeah. But before we move on, Miami did have someone injured before the final or before the semifinal, I believe. I think they did. I could be wrong, but I think
Well,
Miami's one of the
Miami
big teams that
barely
had someone
got
injured.
past Wake Forest. That's what surprises.
Yeah, but
Because 74-62 was that final.
yeah. All right, we're gonna move on to another big conference. We're gonna move on to the Big West, and the Big West championship was between UC Santa Barbara and Cal State Fullerton. I know I was surprised Fullerton made it all the way back to the tournament championship, as they were not a top 2 seed. They were either a 4 or an 8. Something's telling me 4 or 8, and they were 10 points away from going back to the big dance. But UC Santa Barbara goes dancing this year. So, Cody, who got knocked off in this tournament?
Number 1 got knocked off in that semifinals against Cal State Farmington. UC Irving lost by 3 points, 83 to 80 with that semifinal matchup, and Fullerton tried to make it into the big dance, but sadly the Grouchos of Santa Barbara gets into it after a pretty convincing semifinals win of 92-87.
Yeah. All right, and just to quickly recap the scores here, AJ Mitchell for UC Santa Barbara led all scores with 20 points. He was 8 for 12 from the field, 4 rebounds. And then for Fullerton, Max Jones led Fullerton in the effort with 18 points, 8 for 14 from the field, and 6 rebounds. And on we go to the MAAC with 2 A's. Another all reliable. This really wasn't much of a game, unfortunately. Iona beat up on Marist 76-55.
Wow, it's pretty surprised that Marist got to the championship though. Both Ryder and Quinnipiac lost in the quarterfinals. The 2 and third seed lose to number 10 seed St. Peter's, the old Cinderella from last year.
Yeah.
Almost got back to the championship this year, but lost it to the 11 seed Marist 69-57.
Yeah. Gosh, not a lot of close games, I guess, but yeah, Iona goes back to the tournament after taking a year off because of course St. Peter's was a Cinderella last year, but Iona goes back. They were there a couple of years ago.
I was kind of cheering on Marist to see if they could do it.
Yeah,
Be the
that'd
new
be one heck of a
Cinderella,
run for them.
Yeah.
But Dennis Jenkins led Iona to the victory with 27 points. He was 8 for 18 from the field and 6 for 9 from 3-point. Patrick Gardner led Marist with 23 points, 9 for 19 from the field, and brought down 7 rebounds. We charge to the Western Athletic Conference, the WAC.
Whack!
This was also an interesting final. Grand Canyon came in and beat Southern Utah 84-66. It wasn't even close. And wasn't Southern Utah a 1 or a 2?
Southern Utah was the 3rd seed, number 3.
And GCU was what, the 4?
5th.
The 5th
seed. Yep. I picked Grand Canyon University to win this conference. I don't know why, but I'm happy they won. So I picked them to win, and somehow they did it.
Yeah.
The big upsets here would have been UT Valley and Sam Houston State, the teams that I remember talking about saying they're going to probably make it into this into the big dance where those two teams sadly both lose in the semifinals game. Grand Canyon beat Sam Houston by 3, 78-75, and then Southern Utah beats Utah Valley by 1, 89-88.
Yeah. All right, yeah, and just to quickly recap the stats here that I got, Rayshawn Harrison led all scores and especially for Grand Canyon, with 31 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. And then Tavion Jones for Southern Utah had 17 points. He was 6 for 12 from the field and 3 for 6 from 3 points. And then on we charge to the Atlantic 10.
Whoop,
Now
whoop.
here we're definitely getting closer to the end here, but just because all these tournaments happened later in the tournament season.
This
But
was on a Sunday championship, so right before the selection show.
yes, yep, we're starting to get there now. So a lot of ones here on those final days. VCU beat Old Reliable Dayton 68-56. The
Dayton
final
didn't
score.
make it.
No, Dayton did not make it, and I
I'm
was kind of
surprised by that.
surprised
I'm
because
surprised by that.
I was told the other day that Dayton actually hasn't made it since 2017.
They're usually the only reason why I always remember Dayton is because they're always in the first four
Yes,
at their own place.
at their own
'cause it's-
venue. Yeah.
Yep.
But I was happy for VCU.
I kind of saw VCU. I know VCU is the other team that I usually think out of this conference. It's usually Dayton, VCU, or St. Louis is the team that I usually will see
Yeah.
make it into the tournament for this conference.
Yep. Yeah. So
But VCU, there wasn't really any upsets other than St. Joseph's getting all the way to the quarterfinals till they lost to Dayton. Everything else was kind of same as usual, and
yeah.
VCU kind of handled Davison 71-53, and then St. Louis they smacked them 90-78.
Okay. All right.
Smacked
Yeah.
them.
Not too many big things in the stat cap. Dayton actually had the game's highest score in Darren Holmes. He put up 28 points. He brought down 16 rebounds and was able to get 5 blocks. And then for VCU, they had Adrian Baldwin, who put up 16 points on 6 of 10 free throw shooting and 7 assists. On we charge to the Big 12, taking place in Kansas City. Texas beat up on Kansas. This was also one of the surprises in my book. Typically, Texas doesn't make a really big showing in March. They end up getting to the tournament, but they don't typically make a big showing. They beat up on the defending champs, 76-56.
I was going to say Texas actually has been doing very well recently in the Big 12. Like I would agree with you that they usually aren't the basketball team, but this year they kind of have shown their strengths with beating up on Kansas, Kansas State, and Baylor over this year.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
big
because I remember I was going to brag this over both of you that you both were adamant that Kansas State was going to have a shot in the championship, and they went down
in the first freaking round. I'm going like, well, there goes my authority on the Big 12. What the hell, man? They got destroyed.
Okay. They made
against
the tournament
TCU. Anyway. Everyone makes the oh, you mean the big one? Never mind.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the conference. It's gonna like everybody makes the tournament. But yeah, they got smacked. TCU smacks them 80-67 in that one, and both me and Dash were crying after that. So. And then after that, there's no really upsets other than Iowa State beating Baylor. But then both of those upsets lost to the number 1 and 2 seed in the semifinals. And then Nate's already told you who won the championship.
Yeah. Yep. And in the final game, Kansas had the higher score with Jalen Wilson with 24 points on 9 for 19 shooting with 6 rebounds. And Dylan Disu for Texas had 18 points on 7 for 9 shooting and 6 rebounds. And then we go over to the Big East. This was a conference that I was adamant that Marquette was going to have a big shot to win this whole thing. And they did. They handled Xavier in the final game 65-51.
Yeah, I was not surprised. Marquette was the team to that everybody was saying was going to be maybe a number 1 seed into the big dance, but sadly there too. Purdue beat. I think Purdue barely squeaks by with that Big Ten championship win to get that last number 1. But we'll
Yeah.
talk about that later.
Yes, we will. I have plenty to say about that one. But yeah, just to quickly recap, just because the Big East championship was kind of straightforward.
Yeah, there was no upsets. All the top seeds
All the
won. Oh
chalk.
wait, sorry, never mind. DePaul beat Seton Hall. So
Yeah.
DePaul was the only upset in this bracket.
Basically to chalk though. So we'll go over the stat cap here and then we'll move on. Tyler Kolek for Marquette had 20 points with 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. For Xavier, Adam Kunkel had 14 points on 5 for 17 shooting and 4 rebounds. On we go to Conference USA. Florida Atlantic nabs that conference championship and a big win over. Help me remember who the Dragons are, Cody.
UAB.
UAB.
They're the
knew I wasn't gonna forget
Blazers.
them.
It's the
It's
Blazers,
the Blazers, not the
not the Dragons. Come
Dragons.
on,
It's
man.
just their dragon with fire as their logo.
Yeah, Blazers.
I was happy for Florida Atlantic. I remember when they got ranked earlier in the year, and I was happy that they were getting attention like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely felt they deserved to go all the way to the tournament.
Didn't UAB win the conference championship last year or no?
I want to say they did. Yeah.
Okay, but Florida Atlantic pretty convincingly wins their first game 75-51 and then squeaks by Middle Tennessee with a 68-65 win in the semifinals. But UAB was the little surprise upset in the semifinals against the number 2 seed North Texas with a 76-69 victory.
Yeah. All right. And then to briefly go over the stat cap here, Elijah Martin led all scores with 30 points on 12 for 19 shooting with 11 rebounds. And then UAB's Jordan Walker had 18 points on 6 of 20 shooting and 4 of 12 from the three-point line. On we go to the MEAC. Very good game in this one. I watched this one. This was a very good finish between Howard and Norfolk State. There were plenty of times in those last minute that I thought either one of these teams it was going to make it, because all of a sudden I was like, okay, now Norfolk State's got to have this. And then nope, never mind, Howard gets it. Gosh, this was quite the final game. Cody, help me remember what seeds these two teams were.
Howard was the number 1 seed overall with a pretty convincing first quarterfinals victory over St. Carolina State, 91-55. Smacked them. And then also they smacked in the semifinals against UMES. I don't know what that stands for, but they also allowed only UMES to score 55 points again. And while they scored 74, smacked them. Howard plays. Howard also beats Norfolk State in what probably was the most entertaining championship, I would have to say, out of all the conferences with a 65-64 win. I know Norfolk State usually is the team to come out of here and win the conference to get into the bracket, but they did, however, get to the championship with a pretty convincing semifinal and the quarterfinals win, with the quarterfinals being a 73-56 win, and then in the semifinals 72-65 overtime win.
These teams were destined to meet in the championship game, but
which was kind of sad for me because I picked North Carolina Central, the 2nd seed, to win it all, and they didn't even get to the championship.
But
it's not been my year for
no, it has
already,
not.
so I'm scared. I'm very scared for this bracket.
And we'll definitely go over those later. But just to briefly go over the stat cap, Jelani Williams led Howard with 20 points on 6 of 11 shooting and 6 rebounds. And Norfolk State's Dana Tate Jr. was right behind him with 19 points on 8 of 15 shooting with 7 rebounds. On we go to the Mountain West in a very, the score doesn't show it. I thought it was a kind of a lopsided game a little bit. But San Diego State claimed the victory over Utah State 62-57. Not a lot of shooting in this game, as both scores I have highlighted here scored 16 and 13 points, respectively there. Matt Bradley had 6 of 14 shooting on 1 steal, and Stephen Ashworth for Utah State, 13 points on 5 of 13 shooting and 2 of 7 from the 3-point line. Cody, how did the rest of the tournament play out?
There was only 2 upsets in this tournament bracket, conference bracket. Sorry, San Jose State, the 5th seed, over number 4 state Nevada, and Nevada still makes it into the tournament. Big dance after that. And then Utah State, the 3rd seed in the semifinals, beat Boise State, the 2nd seed overall.
That's right.
But I
That.
would say whoever faces San Diego State, all you got to do is score more than 64 points, because they won. They in this conference bracket, they've won 64-61, and then in the semifinals, 64-49, smacked them, and then in the final they only scored 62. So all you have to do is really get over the 64 mark, and you might win.
Something tells me that's probably not how it's going to play out, but you never
Oh,
know.
well, come on.
But on we charge to the Pac-12, where, of course, it pitted Arizona and UCLA against each other, with the Wildcats claiming victory for the 2nd year in a row, 61-59. Yes, Cody got this one right. Along with that, teams really didn't have a great game, but Azuolas Tubelis for Arizona had 19 points. On 5 of 17 shooting and 14 rebounds. Amari Bailey for UCLA had 19 points on 8 for 14 shooting and 7 rebounds. Cody, weren't these the top 2 seeds?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
That's
It didn't go all to chalk, I don't
right.
think. I don't think the whole tournament went to chalk, but...
No. The only big upsets were Arizona State over USC in the quarterfinals, 77-72. And then the Arizona State had to face their all-time rival, Arizona, and they could not beat them. So,
yeah. But, yeah. All right. I'll quickly move to the SWAC. This was an interesting... This is how interesting how this all played out. Texas Southern's going back 61-58 over Grambling State. Wasn't
they
Texas
were the
Southern
last seed?
Yeah,
they were the last seed in freaking.
Oh, this was quite the tournament to see play out, because I was like, no way. Texas Southern, because we ruled them out in the initial predictions.
Yeah,
that Texas Southern was not going to be able to repeat. And then they prove us all wrong and beat Grambling State and go back to the big dance as the worst record in the NCAA tournament with 14-20.
That's why they're in the first 4.
Yes, they are.
Hey, I got the mascot right. I picked the Tigers. So there we go.
Of course. But
not the right Tigers.
This just shows anybody can win in March. Anybody. It doesn't matter who.
It was 66-62. They had the big upset in the first round over Elkhorn State, number 1 seed overall, and then they beat the 5th seed, Alabama A&M, 74-61, and then there's that championship game, which it was pretty close till the final seconds with Texas Southern with the upset.
Okay.
And as the last seed and probably last team in the bracket in the big dance.
Right. Now, just to quickly go over the stat cap here, nobody really had a huge game for either team except for probably P.J. Henry of Texas Southern. Put up 19 points on 5 for 18 shooting and 4 of 8 of 3-point shooting. Jonathan Acu for Grambling State at 11 points and on 4 of 7 shooting with 10 rebounds. On we go to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
This was an interesting tournament how it played out. While Purdue ended up going all the way to the championship as the 1 seed. And winning it 67-65. Penn State was the 10 seed, mind you, playing for their NCAA tournament lives for pretty much this entire tournament.
And they got it?
Yes, they did. They did make the tournament. But, gosh, I got to say, the player that was fun to watch this entire tournament was Zach Edey, their Purdue's tall 7'4" big man. I mean, as long as he didn't miss shots that were right next to the hoop, he was making everything. You give him the ball and he just barges through and puts the ball on over the rim, and it's just that's what he does every time. So it's going to be tough for a team to beat Purdue unless they can stop him.
Well, the big surprise here is probably 13th seed Ohio State getting all the way to the semifinals.
Yes.
They always wake up in March somehow. I don't know what the Buckeyes do to wake up in the morning in March and just show off.
They
their
did not make the
skills.
NCAA tournament though, so I was happy.
No,
I was very
yeah,
happy
me
with
too.
that.
They'll probably be a first seed in the NIT though after that performance.
They already announced that, but yeah. Just to quickly recap the stats here, Zach Edey finished the game with 30 points on 12 of 17 shooting and 13 rebounds. Sean Lundy for Penn State had 19 points on 5 of 9 shooting and 8 rebounds. And on we charge to the SEC, where we both
Whoop
have
de
gripes with
doo.
how this all played out.
Whoop de doo.
Alabama wiped the floor with Texas A&M, 82 to 63 in the final game. Brandon Miller led the Crimson Tide with 23 points on 5 of 20 shooting with 12 rebounds. And for A&M, Dexter Dennis led them with 14 points on 4 of 12 shooting and 5 rebounds. We all groan because we all wish they weren't as good at football, honestly. And now, of course, they are playing well in basketball.
And they're the number 1 seed overall.
I don't like that, but we'll leave that for the other video.
Yep. But there was the only big upset was probably 6 seed Vanderbilt winning by 7 over 3rd seed Kentucky in the quarterfinals. So the Commodores had 1 game to cheer about. But they sadly could not beat the Aggies of Texas A&M in the semifinals.
Did they make the NCAA tournament? I know they were playing for it.
Commodores? No.
I don't think they did, yeah. Since they lost so early, they didn't make it.
No, they didn't lose so early. They made it to the semifinals.
Yeah, but apparently they needed to make it to the championship to make the NCAA tournament. I don't know how their logic went on that one. But
well, Mississippi State made it to the tournament, and they're a lower seed than
that
Vanderbilt.
Is interesting. So it's just resume. That's the weird thing with the committee. But on we go to the center of the country with the Mid-American Conference. The MAAC championship was played between Kent State and Toledo. I know Kent State just beat down on Toledo 93 to 78.
Smacked them.
We were really hoping that Toledo could pull it off because I don't think Toledo's been back to the big dance since 1992. And Kent State, this is a repeat for them. They were just there last year, so gosh. They
were all pretty much close games in this one, except for the Archon versus Buffalo. I was about to say Buffalo. I just said it right. All right.
And Akron. Yeah.
And Akron. What did I say?
Archon.
Sorry.
But
Archon. Nope. Okay, that team I can't say gets over 100 points by 1, so 101 points in that victory over Buffalo.
Yeah, yeah. Just to quickly recap the stats here, because I know we're running out of time a little bit, but Sincere Carey carried Kent State with 26 points on 8 of 15 shooting and 4 of 9 from the 3-point line. Cedric Milner led Toledo with 25 points on 8 of 13 shooting and 10 rebounds. On we charge to the American. This was an interesting how this played out. Memphis only beat Houston. The final score was only 75-65. It felt like they beat them by 30. I mean, Houston didn't play very well. Now, they did lose one of their best players the game before.
Yes.
So they just didn't have him for that game, and it showed. I mean, their highest scorer had 12 points on 5 of 11 shooting, but he did have 20 rebounds. That's an astonishing stat. But versus Memphis had a 31-point shooter in Kendrick Davis on 10 of 21 shooting and 3 of 6 from the 3-point line.
I will say Memphis kind of had a pretty convincing final 2 games in this conference with a semifinals matchup. They win by 40 points, 94 to 54, smacked them. And then in that final game, as Nate said, 75 to 65.
Yeah. All right. And now we're going to move on to our final conference, the game that finished last. The Ivy League Championship was played between, of course, Princeton and Yale. Nobody else seems to contend for this championship any of the years.
Nope.
And I believe both of the semifinal games were 20-point blowouts.
No.
Was only one of them then?
Yep. Yale beat Cornell by 20 points, but then the Princeton only won by 7.
That's right. But Princeton beat Yale pretty convincingly, I'd say. It was 74-65. It was closer
Smacked them.
with about a minute and a half to 2 minutes left, but Princeton got the win. And I don't mean offense to either of these players, but I am not going to try and butcher your names. So Princeton's top scorer put up 21 points with 5 rebounds and 4 assists, and Yale's top scorer put up 18 points on 5 of 16 5 of 16 rebounds. Apparently, that's what I meant. I think I meant 5 of 16 field goals and 3 assists. Yeah, this tournament pretty much went to chalk. It's only a 4-team invitational, so
Out of 8.
yeah. Cody, you have any thoughts on the Ivy League?
No, they're smart.
So, all right. Any final thoughts here before we wrap this up? I know we're running out of time, but
Can't wait to do my picks, and hopefully I get a perfect bracket to pay off some loans.
of course, yeah, we all try and do that for
Yep.
our loans.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
Um, All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Tune in as later this week and maybe even tomorrow after this is posted. We will be releasing our NCAA tournament preview, which will come out before the first round begins, while the first four is playing. So hope you enjoy that. And thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.
Bye bye.